So, I am Amjad Samuel, and I have a bit of an interest in technology, but also more so in how we connect people. That is the driving force behind the technology explorations. And a few years ago, I realized that we live in a very visual world today, and most people are not interested in just listening to you. They want to see a video of you. And and that can get very problematic with not knowing technology and so many other things. And so I was exploring, as we went into the season of COVID-19, other colleagues who are also working on different expressions, creative, imaginative expressions of how to respond to this crisis. And one of the people I found was Matt. And I really do enjoy watching his videos and how he puts together. And so he and I were in a conversation, and I said, I want to learn from you some of the best practices of what to do with a video. So he has so graciously accepted this offer to be a resource person today and just talk about some of the things that at least he considers when he does his videos. And this is supposed to be really an open forum for us to have conversation and to really learn from each other. And also Matt as sort of an expert today. So that's my introduction of why we are here. The next person that I call on, who's the next person on my screen, is Amanda. Amanda, would you like to give a little bit of an introduction of who you are and why you are here today?
So my name's Amanda. I attend St. Paul's with Father Amjad, clerk of the vestry over there. And when we decided to suspend in-person services and go virtual, I kind of was there and jumped on board with my background of a music teacher, preschool teacher. I know how to use a computer. I'm a visual person. And so I began compiling all of the videos we use in our services. And I'm learning as I go each time we do it. I just downloaded some new software that looks very promising, but I'm anxious to make sure that we're producing as high a quality as we can to catch people. And that's about, so I'm here to just kind of see where to go.
Thank you. Marilyn, would you kind of go for
Sure. Marilyn Anderson. I live in the northwest corner of Connecticut, about as far up in the corner as you can get, just a hop, skip, and a jump from Massachusetts and also from New York State. And it's great. Anyway, so I'm retired now. I retired about 2 years ago, and I'm doing tons of supply, which generally I really enjoy supply, but I'm bumping up against the restrictions of being a supply priest. In other words, I'm not the person making decisions. And so, which is interesting, you know? So it's a real change. And so one thing I'm doing is I've led morning prayer a couple times on Zoom with this congregation, but some of the folks are not comfortable getting onto Zoom, you know, and okay, so what do you do then? So I've been recording morning prayer on Zoom using their recorder. And then like a month ago, I sent the file to a fella who used to do work for the church. He put it up onto the YouTube channel for the church. That's nice. But now he's out of the picture. And so I am having to learn how to do this, and I'm hitting into a wall. So I am looking forward to any tips we can get today, not only about my stuff, but in general, because there's so much to learn.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Next person on my screen is Rachel Thomas. Would you like to go?
Come on. All right. I'm Rachel Thomas. I'm a Southeast Region missionary. And I guess the way I'm seeing myself is a very dangerous grandmother with an iPhone that is in this role of, trying to communicate in a very strange land. So I've been, we do a monthly newsletter, but when there was a need expressed that it go to a weekly version, I was really adverse to doing much of more my writing and words. And I thought, I think just if I got a little video clip from people that I'm calling BLTs, Blessed Little Thoughts, of different people around the region, and just said, okay, here's our BLT for the week. And there are all kinds of other resources on the email, but I mean, that's the feature. And it's a blast on the one hand, trying to figure it out. And then on the other, it's like, what am I doing? And I sent you ahead that question about, when you get somebody like Diana, she's one of my candidates. I want Diana to go down to Hammonasset Beach and talk about the beach and birding and their restorative gift. I mean, she's right there at Clinton, so she goes to Hammonasset, right? I mean, so it'd be great for Diana to film from Hammonasset. and then send it to me. Well, but how? And have somebody over in Niantic that actually has sent me a long email with how. But anyway, it's just kind of learning, like, how do I even do this? What's the best practices? And I'm stumbling my way around iMovie, but I don't know if there's anything better for me to like learn. Though it's so simple. It's like I'm hesitant to leave something so simple that yeah. So that's where I am.
Thank you so much. Diana, would you like to go for it?
Yes, so when Rachel asked me about this yesterday, I thought, well, that's a great idea, and I'm perfectly happy to do it. I have no idea how to do it. I do have a tripod. Okay, so this is my technology. I have a tripod. I have an iPhone 6 and a very old Dell laptop that will not allow me to put even a Zoom background behind me. So very low technology ability here. And I think the main thing for me is how, and maybe it's because I'm only familiar with Facebook that only allows you a very short clip to upload. But these clips they take up a lot of memory, and I'm not sure how to either upload it to some place where Rachel can get it or get it into a format that I can email to her. So that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you. And where are you serving then?
Oh, I'm sorry. Holy Advent in Clinton on the shoreline.
Thank you so much. Sandy, I see you next.
She's muted.
I'm now unmuted myself. I'm Sandra Cosman. I am the Secretary of the Diocese and the Rector at St. John's in Pine Meadow. And shortly before the COVID-19 pandemic, I had been asked by members of my congregation to start recording services and sermons, and I said, oh, no, I will never do that. I'm a contextual preacher, and I preach to the people in the room, and I've had to eat those words over and over and over again. We're doing services on Facebook Live on Sundays and Thursdays, and we've done a Zoom service in collaboration with a number of other parishes, but I've come to the realization that I'm needing to step up my game. That person in the background was my son, James, who just made a Dunkin' Donuts run and didn't get me anything. I just wanted to.
We are a people of forgiveness, but that's tough.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you. Matt, would you like to just take over from here?
Sure. So I'm Matt Lindeman. I'm the rector at St. Peter's Church in Milford. And I love that image of the dangerous grandma with an iPhone. That's, you know, in some ways, I think that's a great place to start this conversation, because we were having this conversation with a few folks in the who are tech nerds when it comes to this kind of thing, with Adam Thomas and Mo Letterman and Amjad and myself. And one of the things we kind of got to was thinking of this in some ways as possibly a beginning of what could be like a spring training module, right? And one of the things I'm often invited to do at spring training is to talk about an asset-based community development approach to youth ministry, right? But I think that's very true, especially in this era of COVID-19, when we think about any kind of ministry, because we're all scrambling to realize, holy crap, what have I got? How do I do this? And how do we make the best out of a situation that is suboptimal, to say the least? And so, you know, one of the things I've been able to draw on is the fact that, when I was a camp director, just about me a little bit, I've always been into photography. I would always grab my family's point and shoot little clamshell Olympus camera. You remember those? You slide them open, and just nice little compact 35 millimeter camera. And I used to live in San Diego, and we had east facing windows. And so I'd take a lot of pictures of sunrises, and then we'd get way too many photos of sunrises developed at Costco. And my mom would be like, all right, dude, chill out, But at the same time, that for me kind of came to life when I was in college and I got for Christmas a little 35 millimeter student camera, like a single lens reflex camera that, is like the old school version of something like this. And that helped me kind of train my eye to compose shots because I was in the desert and I was in a beautiful place on my trip abroad, and got to really play with things I care about, big open spaces and nature. And but one of the things that really helped me was just to realize that the only lens I had was a fixed 35 millimeter prime lens. So, if you've ever used an old school camera, there's an old adage that goes into that called focusing with your feet, right? You have to get to where you want to be to take the picture, rather than being able to use, something like a big old. Sorry, I bumped the computer and muted myself. But I didn't have one of these when I was out shooting photos. I had to kind of think about, what do I have and how do I get stuff in the shot. And what's cool about those cameras is it kind of trains your eye, because 35 millimeter focal length. This is so nerdy, but I will land this, okay? That's basically kind of the same focal plane and distance of the human eye. Right, so you're basically you have a physical manifestation of what you already have with you. And so those cameras are helpful because they work a lot like our own eyes do in terms of how much depth of field we have and that sort of thing mechanically. Fast forwarding to, smartphones and that as a tool, I, as a youth minister and as a camp director in a former life, had to do a lot of visual storytelling, especially because I would be trying to get summer camp staff excited about things that I was doing in the woods in New Hampshire in February, to try to get them excited about what they'd be doing in the summer. So I had to take a lot of photos and a lot of little video clips and just kind of things that helped me tell that story that would kind of capture the essence of something, a favorite image of a lake, or a favorite place on the dock where you could see, the mountains in a certain way. So just kind of having a few kind of touchstones visually for me that were kind of indicative of kind of feelings or moments or kind of metaphors for something. And so kind of having some of those go-to places. And, as we think about telling our story as churches, one of the things we're given and have access to in some cases, is beautiful access to sacred space. And even if we can't get into our buildings right now, you know, you probably have beautiful photos of your church building and windows and crosses and, you know, ways of telling a story visually. That's one of the great benefits of stained glass, you know, is that it was designed in part to preach the gospel to people who couldn't read. You know, and, you know, I'm a millennial. I can barely read now, you know. So I blame open floor plan schools. But, you know, thinking about how we tell that story, those are things that kind of always kind of shaped my thinking about doing this stuff. And, you know, some of the things I've just been able to use in my own ministry, just kind of talking about what we do at St. Peter's and why. At first, we were doing Facebook Live in the sanctuary, and we were limited by where we could put our camera, in part because of extension cords would only reach so far. And just kind of some of those sorts of things that are limitations. But one of the challenges with that setup, I feel kind of psychologically in some ways, and this isn't judgment, this is just something I've kind of pivoted from in my own thinking, that one of the things that I find challenging is when you have a camera that doesn't really zoom all that well, and you're in this big old sacred space with no bodies to absorb sound, and so you're really far away and you're echoing, and it takes that feeling of isolation and loneliness and can kind of magnify and amplify it in ways that I don't find helpful. So what I've done is kind of contextual liturgical practice, is I shoot my videos for Sunday morning ahead of time in a beautiful outdoor chapel space that we have at St. Peter's, Milford. So it's a small altar. It's between our parish hall and our sanctuary. And it's a beautiful little space that was an Eagle Scout project back in the day. So it just so happens to also have a wonderfully tuned little wind chime. And these spring days have been kind of, you know, active in terms of wind, especially on Saturdays. I feel like I'm always recording when the sun's out. So that's either on Thursday and my sermon ain't done yet, or it's Saturday morning and I've got to do it, or it just ain't happening. And so just kind of taking advantage of, you know, a single kind of a fixed camera lens that doesn't zoom a whole lot. I currently record on a Mevo camera, which is this tiny little guy. I mean, this is just for scale. You know, this is a Trader Joe's, you know, chapstick I use for surfing, and this is the camera. And it's on this battery pack, and it records directly to my iPad when it's not connected to the internet. You can also stream from it, but, you know, visually it's a helpful tool, but it's just a camera. It's basically a glorified webcam. But the secret to that sauce is that it just needs to be close to the subject you're recording. You have to be close to it, and the audio sucks. So I've had to add to that kit a microphone. This is called a Blue Yeti microphone. It's kind of the Ford Taurus of microphones right now. If you remember how ubiquitous those were, or it's the Toyota Camry of microphones. It's reliable. It covers all. It's very powerful, and it covers a lot of sound for a room, and it can really help or hurt you depending on what's being recorded. I've had to kind of come up with clever things to control wind noise because of the space I'm working in. So I put a soft camera bag over most of it. So I have this soft camera bag that goes into a bag. And so basically I kind of cram this thing in here and shelter it from the wind right now. Like if you saw how the sausage is made, it ain't pretty. But you know, in terms of, and Amjad, if there's anything you want me to like focus on, I'm happy to get there. But you know, in terms of kind of thinking about stuff I like to watch and stuff that I don't watch very patiently, I think about interesting shots. I like things that are pretty. I like videos that tell a story and videos that move. So one of the biggest challenges we have as clergy, right? Liturgically, in church, we move around a bit. We sit, we stand, we change our body positions, we have multiple people moving and really bringing that worship to life in a beautiful way. And it's really hard to convey that when everybody's on a fixed camera on their laptop or whatever. So I try to incorporate movement a lot by using kind of trickery in iMovie. So the tools I use to make videos, I basically use an iPad and then a tool to get video into the iPad. I really can edit most of it on the iMovie mobile app. And it's a great tool. I started using it in part because I loved the iMovie's ability, in the iPhone, I think maybe after the 4, I think it was the 5 and up, where you started being able to do time lapses. And I love the way you can tell a story, especially because I was on mission trip builds where you're framing up a house. And so in one day, you can see the frames come up and you can get people moving like ants, moving the walls in place and getting the roof on and that sort of stuff. So that one of the tools I got myself was a really fancy tripod mount for my iPhone. This is a tiny little portable tripod that's basically like a tent stake with legs, and it's got a Velcro strap on it that you can like strap it to a pole or whatever. And it holds the iPhone. I use it for Zoom meetings too, because I don't, I want to be able to hold things steady. But I record in landscape mode because that's kind of what our eyes take in peripheral vision better than up and down. We tend to visually crop our shot so that we don't, most of our threats as humans come from land-based predation rather than air. So we're not really looking up, we're looking around. And so I think just thinking about how we are built and what's interesting to us, movement helps keep attention. So, some of the basic things, coaching people to submit video for videos, because right now the way we record worship is I have bits of the service that I pre-record, like the opening collect and maybe it's the gospel, maybe it's a sermon, prayers of the people, blessings, all that stuff. But then I ask for people in my congregation to record on their phones and just text it to me. Data plans, here's the thing. I mean, this is just coming from just the way I live anyway. So, I have just gotten to a place where I take so many photos and videos that I just pay to not have to think about it. So I pay $10 a month for the 2 terabyte iCloud storage. That's the level of, especially now that I'm having to use a computer, an iPad, and a phone all on the same account, that you can really hit data limits pretty quickly. So I just pay for a lot of cloud storage. And the beauty of that about the iPhone is that, you're carrying more computing power than we used to put a person on the moon. So with the cloud storage, that's a real issue that mobile devices have a great way of just sidestepping if you have, access to cloud-based storage. So within the Apple ecosystem, and I am not, a Steve Jobs acolyte by any stretch, but because I'm in that world, all my devices talk to each other nicely. It just works and it's easy. But I gotta tell you, I've got a cousin who's a professional video editor. He's done Super Bowl commercials with his editing firms and stuff. And most of the projects he does, kind of like a lot of pro photographers, they're just using their phones and Instagram. They're not necessarily breaking out, the fancy pants camera to do day to day. And my cousin is does a lot of his editing in iMovie because you can pinch and slide and manipulate stuff and just drag and drop clips where you need them. So in terms of kind of stitching things together for worship, what I do is I record things in one long take. If I hate the way I read the prayer of St. Francis, I'll try it again. I learned this trick from the action sports. My internet's unstable. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. I'm so scared of the internet crapping out on me. In the skateboarding universe, one of the things that's interesting is there's this old light bulb joke about skateboarders. How many skateboarders does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is 2, 1 to do it and 1 to film it. And one of the things they'll do is they're just trying to do stuff over and over again. And to get a really hard trick, you do a lot of takes, and they'll just be there all day jumping off of a staircase until they finally land the thing they're trying to do. And a lot of times what will happen is if they get the clip they like, they'll reach over the lens and tap it a couple of times, just so that when you're scrolling through all that footage, you have a visual. That's why in movies they have that cut thing, because you're trying to get a visual place for where to cut the tape or where to cut the edit. So if you have something, if you're just trying to pre-record in one long take, if you do something you hate, you can just be like, no, garbage, cut this. I do that to help myself in the editing process later. And that lets me in iMovie take a clip that's this long and slide it with my fingers to that place where I did this. And then, okay, after I did that, I know I got a good one. So just do those sorts of things. That's some of the practical stuff about editing, but a lot of it just comes from just doing it. I started using iMovie. I was beginning to tell this story and I got distracted, but I started putting edits together of the mission trips I would be part of on the flight home. Because again, I'm a millennial, I can't read, so I'm gonna play with the phone instead. I'm kidding, mostly. I'm actually a 7 on the Enneagram, so like going deep in a book is scary, but kind of playing with a lot of different things is fun. But I would just be sitting on my flight home from Mexico, editing on my phone because it was an interesting project for me. Stitching together time lapses and telling a story in order, sequentially, that gives you a sense of movement. And, depending on what software you're using, you can layer cool music underneath it. If it's just for domestic consumption and you're not streaming it, you can put a lot of iTunes music right underneath whatever you want. That's great for like a parish, annual meeting slideshow. But, if I want to use Explosions in the Sky, which is they did the Friday Night Lights soundtrack, and it just makes anything sound epic. You could be doing the most mundane thing in the world, and it would just be like this major, dramatic, beautiful thing. But I've just kind of focused on kind of visual storytelling, movement in terms of what you're looking at, pacing on things. One of the things that's tricky in church is since we've cut out a lot of the movement and services, that fixed single camera shot of us talking to a camera in a church is a challenge. And so sometimes if you can split out the audio from the visual content, you can splice in, instead of video of just me sitting there reading a book, I can put in images of, a stained glass window in the church about the crucifixion or the resurrection. One of the things that I was particularly happy with in a video I did for our Palm Sunday service was that closing prayer where it says, that we use actually on Good Friday, behold, O Christ, this your beloved family for, and I forget the prayer, but it was kind of, this is your family. And I had a picture of my congregation that I took on social media Sunday or something. And it was all of us, represented as the people for whom Christ died. And it was a color photo, but I changed it to black and white because we had made that Palm Sunday turn from vivid color, happy, to stark, the kind of that, just that Palm Sunday whiplash that we get. But kind of thinking about those visual things within your kind of, purview that you have access to. Another thing that's worth thinking about is the rule of thirds when you're putting a shot together. And I'm still learning this myself, but I was invited to participate in the Stations of the Cross for ECCT. And, one of the basic things to think about in terms of that is, if you break up the frame in terms of thirds, 1/3 here, 1/3 here, 1/3 here, you just kind of want to be somewhere in kind of maybe a little bit off center if you're trying to capture something else in the shot. If you think about is anyone familiar with like the golden rectangle in art or in geometry? There's a certain, and I'm not sure what aspect ratio we're in here, but there's a mathematical formula called the golden rectangle. And it's kind of like Da Vinci did a lot of drawings on that, where the rectangle could fit in a lot of different ways, but it basically is almost like a nautilus where it spirals in and it's slightly offset. But those sorts of things are kind of natural aesthetic helps that help you frame up a shot in a way that's kind of interesting. And sometimes a lot of what I do is just me holding a camera, like a GoPro or an iPhone, and I want to capture what I'm saying, but I also want to capture what's behind me. And so kind of if I'm in 1/3 of the shot and I get the rest of 2/3 of a landscape that I like, that'll be behind me, but there's plenty of room for that to be seen. Sometimes that means in a church, right? If you want to get, yourself and the altar and, the reredos or something, you kind of need to change your camera angles. Straight on isn't always the best way. Sometimes you need to come at it from an angle. I believe it was Emily Dickinson who said, about storytelling, tell it slant, and sometimes that's kind of just getting a little bit more in the shot makes it more interesting. Another thing Amjad had asked me about in terms of transitions and editing is kind of moving, like in church, right? When someone finishes a reading, right? We say the word of the Lord, and there's kind of a natural breath, thanks be to God, and there's a rhythm of them sitting down and someone else standing up and starting the next thing. It isn't just boom, boom, boom. And I think when we do, if we want a moment to kind of hang there for a second, sometimes you can build in, especially in iMovie, between blocks of things. If you're kind of dragging video content down into the bar where you're stitching everything together, and I'm sure Adobe is similar to this, where you have kind of a timeline of what you're putting together. Building in transitions, the mobile version of iMovie lets me do, for example, like a 2-second fade to black. So it's basically like a long eye blink, or if you think of it this way, like a breath between, between the antiphonal parts of a psalm. If you think about like the asterisk in a psalm, right? There's that moment where you kind of pause and breathe a little bit, which I'm not even doing right now as I kind of go nuts telling you these things, right? But just kind of slowing it down. Pacing can be a helpful thing. The movement is helpful. But also kind of creating a little bit of space between moments in your video can be a helpful tool as well. It also can be a nice way to cut it, to kind of cover up any errors you've made. If you need to kind of paste over a take, sometimes when I'm recording things, if I did a prayer and I'm really frustrated, and I want to do it again, and so I'm doing it again, but I didn't give myself enough of a pause between one thing and the next. Sometimes you can kind of slide a transition over that to kind of patch it and make it a little pretty. But those are some of the basic kind of things I've learned just from experience in doing this. I'm really flattered that Amjad, has been watching any of the stuff I produce. I think when we look at our own stuff, we're like, I don't know, I don't want to see this again. But some of the things I like doing in terms of, again, just splicing in images of things that are pretty. I'm on my runs in and around my city. There are trees I love, like dogwood trees and that sort of thing, and just kind of finding things that are just pretty to look at, that you can use as random backgrounds. And so I encourage you, if you're just out and about, the best camera ever is the one you have with you. I forget who said that, but it's very true. if you've got the cloud storage, I snap photos of pretty things all the time to be able to throw in as content for whatever I want. There are apps you can use to layer text over photos. And then in iMovie, you can move photos in, and then you can drag how long you want them to be in the shot. So you can have a still frame of a cross, and you can drag the amount of time it's in there for 5 to 10 seconds if you want it to be. And then it has an effect called the Ken Burns effect, where it just builds in motion. So it'll focus on one corner of the shot, and it'll kind of crawl across and zoom in to a different place. And all that is about kind of creating movement. It's just our eyes track that better. It just kind of keeps you on the hook. That's how you can tell a story about the Civil War using black and white photographs and voiceover and still make it watchable, right? My internet's unstable, so can you hear me? Can you just nod if you can hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. So another thing to think about, I'm getting great private coaching from Amjad about questions about frame rate and resolution and those sorts of things. I use basically I record using the video camera on my phone, and then when I save things in iMovie, I basically save them between 1080p, which is kind of one of the, if you're buying a TV, the first definition of high definition is 720p, which is kind of that, or 540, I think. So I basically work at about 720 to 1080 if I have the memory space for it, especially for the Sunday services. For social media and stuff that is basically going to be consumed on a phone, you can go smaller with things like 540. Smaller resolutions, they take up less space and they look fine on a small screen. Because our context is, people watching a pre-recorded video together online on Facebook and commenting about it. That's kind of how we're doing worship right now. It's a little weird, but it's kind of fun. But basically that I'm using in part because I've just got the storage space right now to do it, between 720 and 1080. That you can go higher resolutions than that now. If you're buying a TV now, you basically have to get it in 4K or better if you want it to be kind of reasonably future-proof. If you want it to last the next 5 years or so, that's kind of the new resolution that's even fancier. But 720 to 1080 is kind of a sweet spot for being able to upload stuff and have it actually go up to YouTube and other formats. YouTube is a great tool, especially if you're a nonprofit. You can use Google for nonprofits as, for church reasons. If you are a supply priest and just kind of want to be able to take tools with you, if you have a Gmail account, you can get a YouTube channel and create that. And even on YouTube, if you upload chunks of video from your phone a bit at a time, if you have lots of time to really fidget on, I would recommend doing this on an actual computer with a mouse, where you can really kind of drag and cut and kind of slide timeline, like chunks of video to kind of cut out stuff you don't like. There are, or at least there used to be, I used to do more editing actually in YouTube's own creator studio. But anymore, I basically get it where I want it on my phone and upload it. And I'll basically kind of set that to upload. I'll let it cook for a while. I'll make myself a cup of coffee and then come back and see how it's doing. That's a very exhausting, long litany from me. I'm going to pause for a second. How is this landing? Where do we want to go? Any questions, comments, emotional outbursts? Yeah.
I have questions. So, well, first of all, YouTube. I've been trying to figure out, do you have to have your own channel? Or is it just kind of random?
So YouTube does require that you, if you want to put stuff up, you have to have an account. You have to have a channel.
Okay.
And if you want to upload anything, or if you ever want to go live on YouTube, especially from a mobile device, you need to have been on that channel and to have kind of established yourself there's a process called getting verified. If you ever want to go live on YouTube from a mobile device, you have to basically prove who you are, and you have to have that account. It's basically like a waiting period for a handgun, in large part because people were going live and then committing mass shootings. They're hedging against that. So sorry, that's just kind of how that came about. But if you kind of hit those marks ahead of time, you can use YouTube for going live from your channel. You can kind of collect and curate video playlists from there, both of your own stuff, but also aggregating things from other places that you like. So if you want to get the Strife is Over from the Episcopal Church Virtual Choir from Easter, you can put that on a channel or on your channel's playlist. And there, if you have digital photos from your phone, you can upload that stuff to be the background for your channel. So you can kind of you can tell that story of like what you're about, and kind of have some of those visual cues that help you kind of get there. I'm still dabbling at this, for St. Peter's, I just made a transition, for example, from my own personal Gmail account for the church, which is rector at St. Peter's Milford, which I've renamed to Reverend Mount Lindeman. For a while, that was the church's YouTube channel, and I actually just had to figure out how to drift everything over to a different kind of account called a brand channel. So gross, right? Church branding. But I'm trying to make it less about me and more about the church. So if I get hit by a bus, that will exist and someone else can put stuff up there too. We're still kind of in a place right now where this is very me-centric, and that scares me. And I want to do that knowledge transfer, but it's hard to do that without being able to do it in person. But, in terms of setting up YouTube, it's helpful to just kind of think about having a Gmail account that has a name that isn't embarrassing, right? So, probably if you're, Jigglypuff 2020, if you're a big Pokemon fan, maybe start a more professional Gmail account name to get you there. But those sorts of things, it's a free tool, and you can use it. You use it pretty effectively, and you can post YouTube videos to any number of social media platforms. You can embed them on websites. It can be a really helpful tool for you. And people can subscribe to a YouTube channel so that anytime you go live or anytime you publish anything, then they get an email letting them know, which is a powerful tool as well. Imagine you had a microphone that people that would just kind of chime in people's inboxes every time you spoke on it. That's kind of what happens if you go live on YouTube. Your subscribers will get an automatic email. And that's a tool you have to use gently because you don't want people to unsubscribe. Just like Constant Contact. If they unsubscribe, getting them back is really hard. So you want to go gently.
My other question is about Instagram. You mentioned something about putting things on Instagram that you can then grab and take somewhere else.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So Instagram's tricky. They don't let you stream live to other platforms from there. There's a video component to Instagram now. There are cropping issues with Instagram that you have to kind of think about. When I use Instagram, I actually, there's a little button on the side that gets you beyond, that platform began in part because of kind of a retro feel for like a Polaroid, like a digital version of a Polaroid, right? So a square photo rather than, a 6x8 or whatever. But you can pull photos out to Instagram. You can crop them wider, and then they become more useful across other platforms as well, like Facebook and that sort of thing. What I often do, if I have pretty photos of my church that I just can't find on my hard drive because I have so many, I will often go into my church's Instagram or Facebook account and just, right click and then save as, and just download stuff over and over again to my desktop so I can use it. But Facebook photos are very easy to download and then save as in a lower resolution often, which can be very helpful for a phone. You can grab that content, and as long as it's not too gritty or grainy, you can work with that stuff pretty well. Instagram does let you do longer videos. Basically, you're limited if you're doing video to a 1-minute clip, or you can do longer videos in Instagram TV. That is not a platform I have pretended to master yet. I have done some stuff with that, but editing within Instagram is a giant pain for me. So I've done less of that recently because it's a time suck for me. If I can get an iMovie, what I'll often do is edit in iMovie and then I can save it to my phone. That's often the piece that's hard, is getting it out of the apps kind of bin and exporting it, saving it to your phone at a certain resolution. And then from there you can, or whatever device you want it to go to, then uploading it from there is the way I often work, because iMovie gives me the most creative control over sound, over image, whatever. You can even, on images or even video, I've done things where, like, I recorded, we talked about a Zoom worship that you can record and then re-upload later. I had one fail where I was trying to get all my youth to do Alleluias for Easter. So I had them on a Zoom call, and instead of speaker view, it was still in gallery mode. So instead of having just, Billy saying Alleluia, it was the whole Brady Bunch, and it was just Billy speaking. But, in iMovie, I was able to kind of pinch and zoom in on just the video of him. So it kind of cropped everybody else out, and you can kind of edit things that way. But for Instagram, it's a wonderful tool for photos and a wonderful platform for short videos, and also kind of limited. It's a haiku. It's not prose poetry.
Right.
Thank
Long
you.
answer. Sorry.
Thank you so much. So we are at 11:50. I think we could go on for another 10 minutes, and that would be an hour. So any other questions? But also, this is also a forum for crowdsourcing, right? So
Yeah.
sharing your thoughts and what you have found helpful in terms of the video making and using that platform.
Marilyn had a question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I must confess, I'm not very far at all in terms of video making or any of these other things. But so my question is going to be more basic. Maybe others can relate. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take a Zoom file and upload it onto the church's YouTube page. Now, this morning I had to go through and because I wanted to do a custom thumbnail on the thing that you see when you go to the channel. So I had to get verified. So that's done. Yay. And apparently now I have a Marilyn Anderson YouTube channel. Big deal. So, but I don't care about any of that. What I want to know is, like, when I tried twice to get the video recording processed, that's their word, by YouTube, so that YouTube can house it now on the St. John's video channel, YouTube channel. And both times I got a message, processing abandoned. The video could not be processed. Can you give me any, I don't even know. And furthermore, I guess I was also surprised at the time that that I wasn't asked for any kind of password to get into the YouTube channel for that church. Wouldn't you think people would need, I have it, I found the password the hard way, but I think I have it. But so I'm just all confused. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know where to go with this file that it can't be processed. I don't know what it means even.
Rachel's waving. She may be able to speak to that.
Matt, you guys probably know better, but Marilyn, what I had trouble with was when I tried to do that on my work computer, it
Yeah.
remembered me as Rachel Thomas, and it didn't yet recognize me as Southeast Region ECCT. So I had to figure out where, and I could not tell you, I'm sorry, I figured it out, but I couldn't tell you where I figured it out. I had to like tell YouTube, this is not Rachel Thomas. This is, I think what I did was that I signed out of whatever Gmail account it had for me. And I signed into the Gmail account that I had used to create the Southeast Region ECCT YouTube page.
Okay, so with
Does that sound right? I mean, I had to tell the computer, forget me, forget Rachel Thomas, think of me as Southeast Region ECCT.
Good. So Rachel, what that means for me then is I need to get out of my Gmail account and get into the email account of St. John's Church.
Yes.
Right. Into whatever their Gmail account is, and then you should have a connection, and you may have to then tell the password. I don't know, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So in other words, it wouldn't process my video any further because it thought I was an intruder or something.
That's one plausible explanation. Another could be that you have a screensaver that cuts on after 2 minutes of not using your phone or whatever device you're on.
Oh.
And then the app goes to background.
Yeah.
I learned this while working on my iPad, because the iPad has a feature where you can set whenever the screen would shut off. And basically when you're working with video, it's very costly for the computer's resources to do this. So you want to, one of the things for anything we do online is you want to be plugged into power. You just, if you can be plugged in, do it. That goes for audio, that goes for video, it goes for all these things.
Okay.
The challenge sometimes can be that you just need to turn off whatever energy saving features you have on the device you're uploading from to never sleep. Just like video editors never sleep, they're caffeine addled people. You kind of want to be in the same place.
Right, they call that auto lock on
yeah, exactly. So that I've found to be disruptive, because it'll go into a place where it'll stop using all those resources, because your computer's saying this is, it's like your human body. If you were running an interval workout around the track, like everything about your body is being like, can we stop now?
Yeah, okay.
And you kind of have to be the coach saying, no, not yet, not till this is done. So.
Okay, thank you. So it takes a really long time to process like a 1 hour video from Zoom, right?
It can. And so like, Zoom, if you do a cloud recording, right, you'll be able to download that video file and then re-upload it somewhere else. And it can take time.
Okay, thank you.
Rendering, right? It's both a video term, and it also is talking about like, making stuff out of hog fat. It's an ugly process, and it takes a long time.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Yes.
So I don't love iMovie just because I work in PC.
Yep.
So I found, if you don't love iMovie, Win Movie Maker is very easy to use.
Right.
Very easy. I've recently upgraded to Cyberlink's Power Director because it just has more features and it allows for smoother things.
Yeah.
I also am a mom of 3 and I can't always get out to take pictures.
Right.
And so there are a lot of websites that offer free stock photos and videos. I use Usplash for photos and Pexels for videos, and they're wonderful. They're absolutely like 1-minute videos of the beach, and the water's moving a little bit, and we're singing the doxology in the background. And
absolutely.
So that has helped a lot, knowing that there's free resources out there.
And there are all kinds of apps and things that let you either do text over a photo or text over a video. I've even just paid for a small app that lets me do scrolling text like a teleprompter. Both that I have a teleprompter app that'll let me read, for example, if I'm recording the gospel from my iPad, one of the challenges we have right now, especially see it in Zoom as well, right? Where if you're on an iPad, you tilt it sideways, the camera's over here, but the screen's over here, but everything looks sideways because they're looking at their face rather than looking at the actual camera. but yeah, there's lots of cool apps that kind of help create, things that make it a little easier to record in a natural, connective, eye contact way. One of the things about human beings that sets us apart from, other critters like chimpanzees and orangutans is that, the whites of our eyes kind of help for social learning. And that's our superpower. Cognitively, a chimp will beat a toddler anytime on a lot of logic tasks, but the social learning is what helped us get ahead. So we really cue in on eyes and where they're going. So the more you can make eye contact, the better.
Well, the other thing I wanted to share with files, we use Dropbox to share our files because you can upload larger files. But if you have a Gmail account, you have access to Google Drive, and you can send larger files through Google Drive. And as long as you share it, can edit, the other person can download it and grab it. So it makes it a little easier because you can't send anything over 25 megabytes or whatever. But in Google Drive, you can.
So, and that's actually, I wanted to jump on just to say that that's what a person that works down in Niantic, and she does a lot of website stuff. But I had asked her, because I've asked her to do a video, and I said, I'm still figuring out how you're going to get it to me, but well, no. And she said, oh, that's like the big, but what she tends to tell people, I guess, is that they should just use whatever file sharing service they already use, whether it's Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive or iCloud, and then share the files URL with me, and make it sure that just what you said, that I can edit it as well. And she said that she'd found that was like the easiest way to get people to do it, because you never know like what system people have, and you have to have a Dropbox account if you're going to use Dropbox, and people don't. I mean, so it was just like she says, just get them to send it in whatever they have. And give you the URL and the access, and how that works. I don't know.
So what you can do is if you go and create a Dropbox account for yourself, you already have. They have a feature called file request. So what you do is you go and set it up, and it gives you a URL, and that URL you can share with anyone. And they do not need to have a Dropbox account. They don't need,
good to know.
They don't need anything. They just need that URL that you will send them, and they'll click on it, and it will ask them to upload whatever file they want to upload. And all of that will then come to a single folder, and Dropbox will alert you when you get that. So it makes it extremely simple for people, because they don't need to have a Dropbox account or a Gmail account or a Google account or anything like that. It's just a simple URL. They'll click on it, and they'll be able to upload any size of a file. So that's a really handy feature. Also on your iPhones, or I think it's probably in your Android as well, there's a very neat software called Luma Fusion. And
called what? What is it called?
Luma Fusion, LumaFusion, Luma Fusion. And that is like iMovie, and it's awesome. You can take multiple videos. It works really nicely with all your cloud storage. So for instance, your Dropbox, your OneDrive, your cloud, iCloud, all of those you can have that you can pull the videos that you have been taking in different locations. You can take all of that and work on your phone, and you can use multiple tracks to produce your video, and it's all done on this little phone. I have used it multiple times for different projects, and then you can save your projects, which are really neat. Exactly. So we have that link from there too. The other thing that for YouTube is an awesome space to have all your videos. And one of the organizing things that they allow you is playlists. So what you can do is, for instance, if you are doing something for the church services, so you're doing worship services, you can create a playlist in which you put all your worship services. And then you can have a Christian formation program, and you can do all of those in that playlist. What it does then is that when you give somebody a link for one of your videos, it will create that whole playlist for them to watch. So that's a really good feature if you want people to really explore what you're offering. So organizing your YouTube videos that way allows you to keep things separate, but also makes it focused in terms of what people are wanting to get out of that experience. Also, in my case, I do my things thematically, so I have different themes for the different programs that I would offer, and then I can offer church things as a playlist. So I don't need to have another church YouTube account. I can just use mine, but then there will be a playlist, and then everything to do with the church will appear that way. So that's a great way to organize your YouTube things. When you use it with Instagram TV is actually great because you can do everything. So if you are thinking about organizing your work, you may want to have certain platforms that you use as foundational. So for instance, if you're using Dropbox, because people don't need to have Dropbox in order to actually upload things, other things they need accounts for. So that's a great foundational thing. Similarly, YouTube is a really good foundational video platform because people do not need any username password to access your videos. So what that means is you can actually take the URL and put it in Instagram, and all of a sudden you are multi-platform, right? So you can be in YouTube, you can be in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, because your foundation is YouTube, right? So that's a really neat way of being in multiple platforms when you're thinking about it as what are my foundational places for each of those functions that I want to do. So those are some of the really neat things. One of the topics that we didn't get the time to talk about is lights. And in my experience, webcams are wonderful, but they don't necessarily always capture good light.
Yeah.
And so you need to have really good light for webcams to work. And you'll be surprised that the camera on your phone is much better in capturing low light videos than any webcam can. So, so if you have your iPad or your cell phone, that's actually a really good thing to have to do videos because not only is it readily available, but it does really good light balance for it.
And the ability to straighten out video that's a little crooked, if your tripod slipped a little bit, to be able to rotate and crop so that it's actually level, very, very helpful. You know, one of the limiting factors I'm dealing with, because my iPad's in the shop, right? I'm on my laptop, and I have good light in this room, but not coming from the wall behind my screen. So I have this stupid little USB light that I'm going to unplug. Sorry I'm going to pan slowly so I don't make you dizzy. That's also good to know when you're making video. If you're going to move slow so you don't make people seasick. Right, there's this silly little USB plug-in light here behind me that they make much fancier, big kind of flat panel LED lights that throw a lot at you. And you know, anytime, if you've ever gone to a church directory photo shoot or whatever, lighting is everything. So that really, really makes a huge difference. And even if the light's kind of harsh, too much is always enough, and you can always kind of dial it back. but it's hard to put in light that wasn't there to begin with. But yeah, the iPad and iPhone cameras, or Android cameras, are even better usually. That's often how they try to steal people away from Apple, is like saying like, look, check this camera out. Like the Google Pixel's amazing. But yeah, those things, I think, the basic setup of an external microphone of some kind, whether that's something that wires in or is a Bluetooth microphone that you can clip to yourself so that people can hear you, good light, and a stable platform from which to record so that you're not doing shaky, jittery. If you've been on a Zoom call with someone with a laptop actually in their lap, it's a nightmare, right? So just to be able to be stable. And again, one of the things that talk about social learning being a superpower, one of the things that if you ever want to check it out, it's just kind of fun. But if you go into the YouTube channel for Red Bull, for action sports or music or anything like that, professional athletes basically live and die, especially in the surfing world, which is where I live. They live and die by their sponsorships. And so they're always needing to create good content that gets the shot that they want with the sticker of their sponsor on their board doing something cool. But if you spend a little bit of time on Instagram or, all these places, if you follow public figures, you can kind of get a sense of how they're going about doing this, because they actually, that's how they live. And so, that's our social learning superpower. We learn to hunt by watching the best hunter in the tribe and figuring out what they do so that we can copy it. And I think there's a lot to be gained from folks who are really good at this already. And sometimes it's helpful to pull it from another discipline so that you're not having to constantly yell at bad theology from a televangelist, right? It's like, damn it, where do I get a fog machine? Like, how else do we show what the Spirit is doing? So, but those sorts of things, I spend a lot of time in other worlds outside of church consuming content. And so some of the things I like doing are just kind of watching what they do. The opening credits for the House of Cards series with all those cool time lapses of Washington, D.C., I have always wanted to be able to do that stuff. So it's who can you steal from? Watch a Scorsese movie, watch The Color of Money, which is about, pool and the cool shots they got of like billiard balls. There's just kind of fun stuff you can do that adds that little creative touch that can be really energizing if you get that content early in the week. This is really hard to do under time pressure. It's just like a photocopier at Easter. If you're printing on Good Friday, the copier knows. So be careful. But if you've got the time to kind of play with it, get yourself to a space where you can kind of play with it for a while and then walk away from it. I often end up doing this stuff in one go, and I'm really grateful for people submitting chunks of the service to me so that I can really just kind of say, okay, cool, put that in here, and really just stitch it together. The more you do it, the better you get at it as well. As I'm sure, I'm not the only one doing this stuff, but it does take practice, and eventually it does become kind of playful, just like doing liturgy, right? At first it's really stressy, and then the better you get at it, the more you're actually present to it as the process. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Mac. This was great.
Thank you.
Sure. Sorry if it felt like drinking from a fire hose. I'm happy to be a phone a friend option on this stuff. If you have specific questions and are just kind of stuck. I did something like this with Anne Fraley because she was putting together a slideshow and wanted to get rid of the Ken Burns feature in iMovie because she was like, why is this moving? I hate this. I was like, okay, cool. What this is. How do you turn that off?
I've been there.
Yeah. So that sort of stuff. There's some of the baked in stuff that's a little bit like, Apple kind of treats its customers with kid gloves a little bit. And a lot of the PC folks are like, nah, get rid of that stuff. I got this. And I respect that. So anyway, happy to continue to help, but I hope this kind of helps at least kind of frame one way of thinking about and approaching this stuff.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, anytime. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Y'all have a good day.